Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the agenda session to order. The first order of business we have is consent agenda. Number one, approval of the April 1st, 2014 City Council meeting minutes. Number two, bid number LS 214, Joe Permy Construction Incorporated resolution to award bid number LS 2014 to the Joe Permy Construction Incorporated for Community Development Block Grant Rehabilitation at Life Source International 602 South School, and to approve a purchase order in the amount of $26,050. Number three, bid number 14, any comments, questions from council? All right, number three, bid number 14-20, Flint Trading Incorporated resolution to award bid number 14-20 and to authorize the purchase of preformed thermoplastic pavement markings from Flint Trading Incorporated for a unit price of $4.03 per square foot as needed through the end of 2014. Any comments or questions from council on that? All right, number four, Continental Flooring Company, a resolution to approve a change order to the agreement with Continental Flooring Company in the amount of $10,250 for the installation of vinyl plank flooring in the Transportation Division office. Any comments or questions on that? All right, number five, United States Conference of Mayors Award. A resolution to accept the United States Conference of Mayors First Place Award of $10,000 for the Prescription Drug Abuse Awareness Program and to approve a budget adjustment. I believe that Mike Reynolds wanted to say a few words about that.
Thanks, Mayor. Council, as the Mayor mentioned, the Police Department is requesting Council pass a resolution to accept a $10,000 First Place Award from that we received from the U.S. Conference of Mayors at their winter meeting this past January. This was for recognition of our Prescription Drug Abuse Awareness Program, so we're very proud of that. Since 2010, the Police Department has partnered with local businesses and nonprofit agencies to conduct biannual prescription drug take-back events throughout Fayetteville. The prescription drug events have resulted in approximately 1,000 pounds of prescription narcotics being seized. These narcotics could be used for illicit purposes or misuse or enter our waterways if they were disposed of improperly. So we're also very proud of that. The mission of our Prescription Drug Awareness Program is to educate the community on the dangers of prescription drug abuse and to do public service announcements as well, along with civic and school presentations. These funds that we're asking that the council accept will be utilized to support the prescription drug abuse campaign. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that on April 26th, we're going to do another prescription drug take-back event. We're going to partner with Project Right Choice and also Collier Drug Stores on Dixon Street and at North Hills Boulevard to host another event. So we're very happy and very proud that we got that first place award, Mayor.
Very good, very good. Any comments or questions for
Congratulations, that's
yeah,
great.
It was
Congratulations,
good.
yeah.
That's a national award. Okay, number six, Mitchell Williams, Sealy Gates, and Woodyard PLLC Amendment Number 2. Resolution to approve Amendment Number 2, the contract with Mitchell Williams, Sealy Gates, and Woodyard PLLC in the amount of $20,000 for additional legal services related to the White River Water Quality Standards petition to the Arkansas Pollution Control and Ecology Commission. Who has that? Anybody have that today? Billy? You might want to let them know a little bit about that.
Well, Mayor and Council, this particular item has to do with the legal actions that have to be taken with regard to the third-party rulemaking effort that we're trying to get accomplished to relieve the Nolan plant from standards for minerals and its discharge that we cannot meet. That rulemaking effort has been complicated by a number of changes from DEQ's perspective and the legislator's perspective with an act that was passed last year that we did not anticipate. Just required additional effort on behalf of the city from the Mitchell Williams law firm to get accomplished. This amount should take us through the known events unless something else changes, and I have at this point refused to say whether they will or not. They could. It's been a convoluted path so far, and it might continue to be. But as far as we understand, with the known tasks that we have before us, this should take us through the end.
Okay. I wanted you all have an update on that. Do you have any questions on that or anything? Okay, thank you, Billy. All right, there was no unfinished business. Under new business, number one, RZN 14-4618, southwest corner of Paddock Lane and Happy Hollow Road, Paddock SD. An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 14-4618 for approximately 9.60 acres located at the southwest corner of Paddock Lane and Happy Hollow Road from RPZD Residential Plan Zoning District to RSF8 Residential Single Family 8 units per acre and NC Neighborhood Conservation. Chairman.
Good afternoon, Council. I did want to say that please ignore the initial memo you have in your tentative agenda packet. We had a mix-up, and we'll have a new one in your final agenda packet. This property is located on Paddock Road. It is the southwest corner of Happy Hollow and Paddock. It's due south of the pavilion that's on Mount Sequoia. There's an existing infrastructure that was constructed there, approved back in 2006 for a project, a mixed, not mixed use, but multiple use, multiple density project, single family row homes, apartments, by PZD back in 2006. The infrastructure was finally completed and the final plat was approved in 2010. It took about 3.5 years to get that constructed, but no homes have ever been constructed on the property. We have a developer that's interested in trying to build homes. There are existing platted lots there. He's realized, I think, that the market really doesn't bear what they originally had planned for, particularly the multifamily uses, and is requesting a rezoning to neighborhood conservation and RSF8, which would still allow relatively close to the density that was approved there previously, but it would be more in single family in terms of the overall use. So, Planning Commission voted to forward this item to you with a vote of 6-0. And just as a side note, the neighborhood conservation essentially would wrap the property, and the RSF8 would be with the interior of the property. That would allow for the buildings to front onto the streets that were constructed and be in our form-based code. We're recommending approval.
What questions do we have? Anything? Okay. All right, number two, RZN 14-4645, north of Alberta Street and west of the Coves. In order to rezone that property described in rezoning petition RZN 14-4645 for approximately 10.22 acres, located north of Alberta Street and west of the Coves from RPZD Residential Plan Zoning District to RSF8 Residential Single Family 8 units per acre. Jeremy.
This is another plan zoning district, residential plan zoning district called the Coves. Much of the first phase is completely built out. The second phase has been under construction. This is, I believe, a third phase of that development. And instead of going forward with the residential plan zoning district that they have approved back in 2008, they would like to rezone this to RSF8. Again, single family, 8 units per acre. That allows for roughly 50-foot wide lots, 5,000 square feet. Again, very similar to the density that was proposed before. It just allows them more flexibility in terms of their timing on construction. As you all know, the previous PVD ordinance had very specific limits on construction, so they're running up against those if they're not already expired. This is a residential neighborhood in our city plan. This is in West Fayetteville, north of Highway 16. Highway 62, and we're recommending approval of this as to the Planning Commission.
Any questions or anything? Everybody good? Go
Where
ahead.
is this in relation to the Ripple Road extension?
This is further west, so you actually cross into the city of Farmington if you're heading west on MLK, and then you go back north into the city of Fayetteville. So it's not quite all the way to Broyles Road, but it's between Broyles and Ripple.
Okay.
Okay, everybody good? All right, number three, ADM 14-4648, Forest Hills PZD. An ordinance amending a residential plan zoning district entitled RBZD 07-2793 Forest Hills to amend the architectural design standards for planning area 1. Chairman.
The Planning Commission has been reviewing, and staff has been reviewing a new commercial development called Freddy's Frozen Custard. It is at the corner of Salem and Weddington. This is part of the overall Forest Hills PVD, which was 80 acres originally. It was divided into 5 distinct planning areas. This is within planning area 1 called the Shops, about 22 acres, and there are 8 to 10 commercial structures approved within that planning area. The architectural design standards that were proposed by the applicant are relatively specific. They've actually have caused quite a few issues with compliance within the development, and this request is simply to add a little more flexibility to those standards while still meeting all of our commercial design standards and requirements. The specific language would allow for this particular development and remaining lots within that planning area, the shops at Forest Hills, to be subject to both commercial, office, and mixed-use design and development standards, but also to specifically state that all structures will be of street scale, that they will, and that's 1 to 2 stories within this particular development, that primary building materials for facilities shall be brick, stone, concrete panels, or textured concrete block. One of the specific items that the original PGD referred to is very specific color patterns and combinations, and it's not something we typically would look at. That's all in the eye of the beholder. We'd rather let the designers and architects present something to us for review as opposed to hold them to specific colors in their buildings and materials. So we're simply recommending approval of what the applicant has proposed in this case.
Okay. It's Ward 4, right?
Yes.
Everybody good? Okay. Everybody good? All right. All right. Let's see, number 4, ADM 14-4635, UDC, amend 151, 166.21, 166.22, 166.23, an ordinance to amend 151.01 definitions, 166.21 downtown design overlay district, 166.22 parking garages in downtown core, Main Street Center, and downtown general zoning districts, and 166.23 urban residential design standards of the Unified Development Code to better align these code sections with the goals and policies of the Downtown Master Plan and City Plan 2030. Jeremy.
We've spoken to you all in a couple of different meetings over the past at least year to 2 years about reviewing current projects that have been coming forward against the intent of the Downtown Master Plan, our parking garage standards. Some of those projects didn't necessarily meet the intent, and we heard that from you all, from planning commissioners, from citizens. And so as a little background, back in 2004, the City Council obviously adopted the Downtown Master Plan. We had months of research, series of charrettes that we went through, public hearings with several hundred citizens participating in that. That master plan created a vision, and one of the implementation steps from that vision was to achieve it was to codify the traditional building form in downtown Fayetteville. So over a 1.5 to 2 years, we created a new downtown design code and design standards that was adopted in 2007. As you all also know, in 2006, we started the City Plan 2025, kind of building on those same principles and applying them at a much larger scale citywide. It was a pretty big shift in the vision for growth of the city, and it's made for different conversations, I think, at the Planning Commission and Council level when we make recommendations. That also led to some design standards that we researched and promoted to you, presented to you, promoting traditional town form. One of those urban residential design standards, which basically affects a multifamily development. As I mentioned, over the past 7 years, the city has been seeing several developments, both in the downtown but also citywide, that utilize and test these standards. What we've tried to do is take those developments, found out what we like about them, what we don't, what we feel like could be improved, and then look back at our specific code sections and try to look back at both the vision document and the codes to make sure the intent is still meshing with what we've proposed. So we also feel like there's a lack of clarity, and we are constantly answering questions from architects and designers about specific sections of the code, so we always try to note those and find out where those are consistently among all of the planning staff so that we can identify issues that we need to clarify. So what this proposal would do is, it gets very technical in some respects, so I'm not going to go into all of that today, but on page 18 of your packet, 18 through 20, there's a very detailed list of changes that Andrew Garner, our planning director, has put together, detailing out every single line item change that we've done. And then also, it's listed obviously within the ordinance. Primarily, the shifts, the changes that we're proposing deal with some technical aspects of the downtown design overlay district, redefining what a stoop is, what the width of a stoop might represent. We've seen some that we did not feel functioned and really came into contact with the public realm like we expected in some of these larger multifamily projects, and so we're trying to address that without just removing the requirement altogether, so trying to give some guidance there. We're also looking at parking garages and entirely rewriting that section. That's the largest section affected. We've recognized also that some of the parking garages that we've seen both in projects that have been constructed but also projects that are planned don't really meet the intent of what we would like to see, and we've heard that from you all, so we've tried to rewrite that section, really identifying 3 different contexts. One, when you're building a parking garage directly adjacent to the street, so there are several examples there. You can you have to have a liner building at all corner locations, so that would be a new requirement. You have to put a liner building in. Pedestrian entrances, no greater than 50 feet apart. And then we go into parking garages that are outside the build-to zone, so further than 25 feet, and then from 26 to 49 feet, and then further back is the lesser standard because you don't interact with the pedestrian realm as much. And so that's how we've organized those thoughts around parking garages. And so please do take a look at that, and I'll explain more of those in detail about what architectural treatments that we felt were appropriate based on the proximity to the public realm. We've also created a sort of a design manual. It's essentially photographs of projects we felt worked pretty well in either screening or adding habitable space adjacent to the public realm for parking garages, and that's in your packet as well, and so that's referred to within our code section too. I'll make further presentation at the City Council meeting, but those are the bigger changes that we're proposing. This also went through several discussions at the Planning Commission. They recommended some amendments that we made within the exhibit, and they have now unanimously recommended it to you all.
Okay. What questions do we have? All righty then. We'll wait till Tuesday. Hang on to those till Tuesday, all right? All right, number 5, ADM 14-4652, UDC, Amendment Chapter 156 Variances. An ordinance to amend 156.03 Development and 172.04 Parking Lot Design Standards of the Unified Development Code to clarify that variances of 172.04 Parking Lot Design Standards may be requested.
This is a relatively straightforward amendment. It would add the ability for an applicant and clarify the ability for an applicant to request a variance from our parking chapter. Our parking chapter is Chapter 172 in our Unified Development Code. Right now, there are certain sections you can ask for a variance from, but others you can't, and so we felt like it would be, this is something, a design standard that should be amended or should be able to be varied with reasonable cause, and so we're simply recommending the ability to ask for that from the Planning Commission.
Previous, if you can see in Section 2, we're repealing what says called waivers, and rather than having waivers of a parking lot standard, it's much better, I think, to have a variance, and that's why we're taking away the waiver language and putting it in the variance section so that it can still be varied, but you won't be waiving a section of the code.
Everybody good? Okay. Number 6, repeal 97.016. An ordinance to repeal 97.016B for City Park ball fields and enact replacement 97.016B for City Park athletic facilities and trails for tournaments and special events.
Hi, Mayor and Council. So essentially, the ordinance right now currently only covers city park ball fields, and we'd just like it to also contain the trails and park areas for any sort of races or events that might come through.
Okay. What questions do we have on that? Okay. All right, number 7. Amend 114.03, an ordinance to amend 114.03, First Thursday, Fayetteville A and B, to change the starting time for First Thursday from 4 p.m. to 3 p.m. Leslie?
As a lot of you know, the First Thursday Fayetteville is the premier monthly arts festival in Northwest Arkansas, and it is a model for others, not just in the state but elsewhere. It's been around for about 5 years. Since then, there has been tremendous growth, both of those who attend, but also with the number of amenities that we offer, the number of artists that we have added. There's a whole kids section that you've seen there now, with food trucks, the staging areas, and you can just guess what it would be to assure the safety of the public, safety of the events, where you have staging, where you have wiring, where you have vendors with their some very large art pieces needing to move in, drop them off, move out. There's a lot of movement and everything that goes on. You had turned it over to the Convention and Visitors Bureau to run it a few years ago, and have allowed them to start preparing for our first Thursday at 4 o'clock. You can guess, even if you were preparing for a party at your own home, how much time it would take just to do a few things. But to stage an event like that, we're asking for an additional hour for them to be able to prep that. So it's probably one of the shortest ordinance changes that you would have. It changes a 4 to a 3. So asking that they're allowed to control that area with the parking staging area beginning at 3 o'clock. You have on your packet, you have a petition of 32 businesses around the square who have supported this. I will say there are 2 that have asked not to sign on to this sheet, and it would be Town and Country and Riff Raff. But the others have very good support for this, and staff supports this. Hazel Hernandez is here from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and she will also be here next Tuesday to answer any questions as well.
Anything from the council, unless any questions or anything? Okay. All right, number 8, RJN Group Incorporated, an ordinance waiving the requirements of formal competitive bidding and approving an agreement with RJN Group Incorporated for professional engineering services to be used for completion of utilities projects currently in progress in an amount not to exceed $56,000 and approving budget adjustment. Don.
Council, this relates to us bringing in internally our design team, which was Shannon Jones, Lynn Hike, and Allison Atha, of which 2 of those positions are open, along with our utilities director position. And so while we are amending our contract with CH2M Hill in a renewal to provide engineering services until we select a utilities director, in the interim, it is cheaper for the city to utilize Shannon Jones to finish projects that he had already started. This gives us the ability to do that, and it's why you see a bid waiver, because he went to work for RJN, which only limits us to contracting with that firm for him to finish the projects that are in process. And that is cheaper than starting over with a new engineering firm to begin redesigning the projects again.
Any questions on that? Okay. Number 9, Walton Arts Center Council Incorporated Agreement. Resolution approving agreement with the Walton Arts Center Council Incorporated to reimburse the Walton Arts Center for the leasing expenses during the construction of the Spring Street parking deck and a monthly amount of $6,000. Jeremy.
The city will begin construction of the Spring Street parking deck this summer, and with that project comes a demolition of existing office space utilized currently by the Walton Arts Center administrative staff. The city has already agreed in principle to pay the cost of leasing the temporary space for the offices to utilize during that construction period. In January, we solicited bids for providing that leasing spaces for the temporary offices. We received 4 proposals. Rindle Management, LLC, submitted the most affordable and most appealing proposal. This location is in the Metro District, which is conveniently located across the street from the theater within easy walking distance. I believe every other proposal was likely within driving distance or required a shuttle. A representative from the Walton Arts Center and Matthew Petty served on the selection committee, as well as other staff, and we voted unanimously to approve leasing the space at the Metro District. We have been negotiating that contract. The Walton Arts Center will actually sign the lease agreement directly with the Rindle Management, as opposed to the city. This action is simply an agreement to reimburse the Walton Arts Center for their lease expenses, which is $6,000 per month. The lease agreement is currently for 1 year with a 6-month contingency to allow for if construction, if they're not allowed to get back into their offices until later in that time period. I believe that's also what was discussed a December or 2 Decembers ago, is 12 months plus another 6 months. This is within our budget currently out of the parking fund, and so that's where this is being paid for, not out of bond revenue. It's something very clearly discussed as well when we committed to paying for this space. In your agenda packet, we do not have a signed agreement. However, that was delivered today, and it will be within your final agenda packet with that agreement with the Walton Arts Center and the city.
Basically gives them a place to go while we build. So, Matthew, you served on that. You want to make any comments on that?
That was unanimous for a reason, it's the best choice.
Okay.
And the dollar amount, we couldn't have had it budgeted necessarily before because we didn't know what the dollar amount was going to be, but this was in the ballpark.
Mhm.
Correct. We essentially budgeted $100,000 based on what we thought we would know, what we thought would be a cost within that realm. We were
And it fell
ballparking.
into that.
Exactly.
Okay.
The initial space, currently it's just a wide open space, when we toured it, and, so part of this lease will go toward, that management company is actually building out office space, within there, but they'll be able to keep that, so part of this will help recoup that cost, but this will also work very well, and then we'll work very closely with Walton Arts Center to meet their needs as well.
Okay, great.
I do want to remind the council that $100,000 budget item is not only temporary office space, but also moving.
Moving expenses as well.
Yep, yep.
Two times, obviously moving out and moving back.
In and out, okay. Thank you very much.
Now, things are about to move on this deck pretty rapidly here, so we're going to be making some pretty quick decisions that you all are going to have to make, so everybody get your seatbelt on. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, number 10, amend the rules of order and procedure resolution to amend the rules of order and procedure of the Fayetteville City Council to change the beginning time of the regular city council meetings from 6 p.m. to 5:30. All right.
I just brought that forward to try to coordinate between us and planning commission, and we've had some long ones, and it might start a little earlier.
Okay.
Anybody have anything to say about that?
Just have Mayor, I know you were here whenever it was changed from 5:30 to 6. I hope at the council meeting you might give us some of that history.
It's actually changed from 6:30 to 6, it got earlier.
From 6:30 to 6.
And you can thank Alderman Marr, it was his motion that meant I couldn't
Yes.
have dinner anymore.
I did get a quote in the paper on it, though.
Oh,
Which was
maybe you prefer not.
No, it's fine. It's fine. He could probably, is he gone?
I think he just stepped out.
Well, of course he did. But he did bring that forward to change it from 6:30 to 6, and there was quite a bit of debate on it, actually. But it did pass, and it was good. I can give it a little more history on it probably on Tuesday, and he probably will too. And it was, at that point in time, we were having city council meetings that went till 1 o'clock in the morning. We went, I think the first 6 months I was on the council, I think the earliest we got out, we started at 6:30, and I think the earliest meeting I got my first 6 months was 11 o'clock. The rest of them were 12, 1. One of them was 3 o'clock in the morning, I believe. So we were. It
seemed like they were late anyway.
It was, kid. It was in the wee hours. One of those.
Oh, yeah, we went past
I mean,
midnight, no question
If
about it.
Sandra was here, she remembers that too, because boy, I mean, they were long.
Made a lot of good decisions after midnight, too.
Yes, yes, we did some stellar work after about 11 o'clock. Anyway, but I'll get into a little more history that was quite.
Efficiency and cooperation go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the least.
So, anyhow. But okay. We have now two agenda session presentations. The first one is the Houses at Willow Bend presentation, Federal Partners for Better Housing and Chico Building and Land, LLC.
Got a commitment with my grandbaby, so Blake can sit in here and listen to this. Answer any questions you might have.
Hi, Blake.
Better angle. Good down for you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Rob, you got this one? I have a few minutes of it. All righty. All right. Peter said that we have a 45-minute limit. That's okay. Well, we'll do it much more briefly than that. I'm Rob Sharp, the chairman for Fayetteville Partners for Better Housing. We're a local nonprofit that's dedicated to providing affordable housing in the Walker Park neighborhood. This project's got a long history, this project, which we'll briefly recap when we get to the presentation. My primary purpose here is to introduce you all to John Anderson of Chico Building and Land. I've got to know John Anderson through his work with the Congress for New Urbanism. He's always been a leader of in bringing great ideas to cities. His superpower is he's able to build attractive, well-crafted houses for budgets that compare to production housing, which is, if you're in the construction industry, that's a very, very difficult thing to pull off. I was able to go out to Chico a couple of years ago and put my hands on the projects that he's built, and they are much, they're very attractive, well-loved buildings, and so I was very excited when I found out that John has been doing some work in Little Rock and Conway, and was able to tempt him up here to work with our organization. And what John has done is take this sort of intentionally vague resolution that we talked about earlier about committing to affordable housing and turning it into a concrete and specific business plan that works for this particular site in this particular place. And he'll go into some details about that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, and he's going to tell you where we are, and then he'll be available for any questions, as will I.
Okay, so how are we controlling this?
Well, that works.
That works, okay.
I don't know how to get back to this. There we go.
Okay. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for your time and attention at the end of an agenda session. It's not often I get introduced with superpowers, so the idea that you can build something that looks good on budget should be an ordinary thing, but in today's world, it's actually quite difficult. This map will give you an idea of where the site is located, currently with the access coming off of Washington and 7th, but we heard pretty firmly from members of the staff that if we could establish access also to Wood Avenue, we could solve some storm drainage issues and further stabilize the drainage issues in the neighborhood. This gives a little better idea where you can see the context for the housing around it, the Jefferson to the north. The idea of the project as it came forward to you for general endorsement in a vague resolution that was intended to help spur some private investment is that we're looking to put together a replicable model for workforce housing that puts the housing within proximity of jobs in the Commerce District and in downtown Fayetteville. But also, this is a project that it's a fairly tough infill site, as most of the places that would be appealing to locate are going to be tough because the easy ones have been done. So this is the plan that was pulled together and presented to you previously. I think there's a lot of attention in this to the idea of active transportation, to get the scale of the streets more walkable, get parking on the streets, full sidewalks everywhere, and to connect to the Walker Park Trail and from there to the Frisco and Skull Creek trails. So it's a project that's connected to a lot of other things in the adjacent neighborhood and should if we're successful, should be a viable model for other infill sites in and around Fayetteville. The scale of this is, these are detached houses or townhouse duplexes that have a real presence on the street. They have private outdoor space. They do the job that a house is supposed to do in a traditional neighborhood. But they're also at a scale that you'll see in Walker Park quite a bit, which is the traditional scale of the one-story, story and a half, small two-story buildings. We're intending that these would be small, efficient, energy efficient, practical houses that look good. My superpower extends into framing analogies that bother people. And we've always called these the little black dress or classic blue blazer house. That it's all about a little bit of jewelry and a little bit of attitude. Goes a long way if you're working on a budget. And this is the neighborhood we built in Chico where I live. These were little 900 square foot houses that sold entirely to single professional women without any kind of focused marketing effort. We found that they were probably our most demanding customer, and that guys will pretty much deal with the house that a woman likes. So, but they were also, at the time, a very good alternative to either condominiums that had been apartments converted and weren't particularly great, but were at a price point that a single person could afford. On the left are sketches from the design charrette that came through on the grant that was put together from Home Depot Foundation. Again, simple forms, well executed, and on the right is a house from our project in Chico. I should point out that this house has the revolutionary form of a rectangle. So it's one that we worked out working with all our building trades and our carpentry foremen, because it was announced to me at a job site safety meeting that we had to get serious about bringing in a house at a price that a carpentry foreman could afford in our own projects. And we were getting to a point where prices were moving up quickly during the rise, and that we had to come up with a way to build a house cheaper and so it looked good and hold up well over time, perform well energy-wise. So just to recap, in 2011 the grant came through. City participated in the grant application. It funded the community outreach in the neighborhood, the design charrette, and the production of a low-impact development manual. Site plans and improvement plans have been reviewed informally with the staff, but no formal submission yet. So there isn't a preliminary plat or formal technical review that's happened by city staff, but we have got a fair amount of input. You all voted a resolution expressing interest to invest approximately $1 million to share the costs of the city infrastructure in the project. But that resolution was kind of, we're voting on something in general principle. We need to see some detail coming forward. So the detail that's been developed is pretty much my fault, but has been supported by the members of the board. And we've got some refinements and some changes to what was proposed to you at the time you made the resolution. That's the next slide coming up. The main things to get sorted out early in that, the big chunks, were that the form of the agreement about how much affordable housing would be delivered and how that would happen, we needed to sit with the city attorney and make sure that we had the form of that right, and then also that we could use the standard cost share agreement and not create some new instrument there. So in December, even though we've been working on trying to sort those things out, we got it to a point where we felt confident that we would be willing to go forward, and the Board of Fayetteville Partners for Better Housing accepted our proposal. We're in on a fee basis. We don't have a profit share or any other economic interest besides trying to move the project forward in a good time frame so our fee doesn't get stretched out over too much time. And then that's the limit of our interest in the project. So here are the things that are refinements or changes from what you've seen previously. The previous submission was for 100% of all the houses in the Willow Bend project to be built and sold to folks. There'd be an ownership workforce housing project, but everybody that would be a buyer would be below 80% of area median income. We're proposing that in order to be able to build the project in a timely way. It's often very difficult to, even though that might be a very appealing price for someone at 80% or less, coming up with qualified buyers in that affordable bandwidth can be really hard. So sometimes the project drags on for several years past what people had expected. So people looking to move into the neighborhood, people in the neighborhood expecting the project to be completed, are living with a construction zone for a longer period of time. It becomes harder to control costs, more overhead to spread, and it makes more sense, I think, to look at a mixed income project, to have a third at 50 to 80, a third at 81 to 100, and a third at above 100% of AMI, basically market rate buyers. So This comes in because of scars I have from doing another similar project in Redding, California, where we had about a third of the houses were reserved for folks at 100% of median income or below. The area was being redeveloped, land had been assembled, we were selected on an RFP process. And we went with the process, and we set it up so that the buyer was subsidized with a soft second mortgage, so the price was identical. And the houses were the same for the affordable buyers and for the market rate buyers. The problem that we created for members of the city council was that we had houses completed, the last 3 houses were completed and sat vacant for 8 months because it was taking time to repair credit and accumulate down payments for people that were in contract but couldn't close yet. Affordable buyers that still had work to do to get across the line to be able to close on the house. And the members of the council got phone calls from people whose sisters wanted to buy those houses, or they wanted to buy the houses. And they're just like the other ones that sold in the neighborhood. What's the problem? Why is the city interfering with my ability to buy a house in a neighborhood I want to live in? So to address that, we would recommend that to target a third of the houses to be sold. They would still be smaller, energy-efficient houses, but targeted at small households at market rate. So someone that makes 102% of area median income, maybe makes $1,200 a year more than could qualify, those folks are in a bandwidth where they can qualify and they can buy the house. This helps with the absorption rate of the project, what we call the absorption rate. How fast are you selling? And how long will the project take? And how much overhead will you have to pay for to have the project take longer? So the second bullet there, the use of what we call a soft second mortgage. The soft second is a second mortgage that interest and principal aren't paid by the homeowner, and it's forgiven over typically 12 years in steps. So if someone was an affordable buyer and had to move away, had to sell their house in the 3rd year, they would see some benefit, some appreciation, but they're not getting a windfall from that mortgage being eliminated in anything less than 12 years. So you stick around in the neighborhood for 12 years, the soft second on a sliding scale of typically about $10,000 to $20,000 gets forgiven. And what makes it possible to make that soft second mortgage is that there's enough equity in the project through the city's cost share to be able to move through the sales process for the nonprofit to hold those soft second mortgages and to control resale and maintain affordability down the line. The last part, the proposal that you saw previously talked about 100% owner-occupied home ownership. And what we're proposing is a lease purchase program that facilitates, particularly for the affordable buyer, the ability to save up the down payment, do the credit repair, get some training in the lighting of a water heater or the caulking of a bathtub, and makes it possible for folks to essentially get engaged to the house, pay rent based on the affordability standards of a third of your gross income. But since the land loan is still being carried by the nonprofit, there's still about $150 to $200 a month that goes into their down payment account. So they're able to accumulate and save for their down payment if they're successful in closing, and if they take good care of the house and they go through the credit repair process. Typically that's one of the big issues, because one of the things that makes it hard to buy a house is if you've recently got divorced, got a medical issue, say a household of 2 people and one person loses a job, you can end up with credit problems. And it takes some months to get that straightened out, sometimes as much as a year and a half. So the ability to get houses occupied by folks that are intending to purchase them and are working toward that purchase, we need to be able to manage that process well. And the idea is not to have rental housing for college kids, but to have lease to purchase option as another tool to be able to move the affordable buyer through the process and not have vacant houses standing waiting and y'all getting phone calls from people who want to know why they can't buy the house. The phone call that happens after the council member gets that phone call, the one that comes to me is really unpleasant. So, the next steps, if we have questions about the affordability targets, the one-third, 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 the use of the soft second, and the lease purchase structure, those are the things that have changed since the last time you've seen the project. But those are things that we think are necessary to really operationalize this and bring it forward with private investment, with regular commercial lending for the construction loan and for the building of the homes. The issue of conditionally saying, well, I think we could handle this cost share commitment in a given budget year. We're not looking for anything more than kind of the resolution you had, thinking, yes, roughly in year X, we would expect to fund that cost share. In conversations with the finance director and the city attorney and the other senior staff, the question was raised, well, could that cost share be spread over, say, 2 budget years? And that really kind of depends on which 2 budget years. If it's 2018 and 2020, that means we're carrying the project all the way to that time, and it really limits the financial viability of the project if you have to wait too long for the reimbursement of the infrastructure costs. For instance, if we were moving forward, completing the entitlement, getting the engineer's estimates so that we can actually execute the cost share agreement for reimbursement at the end of 2015, maybe split into 2016, that could work pretty readily. If the first opportunity for the cost share is later, then we would probably entitle the project and kind of put it on the shelf for the time necessary to before we would start spending serious money improving the site. So so that kind of tells you where the project is relative to the decisions you would need to make about how the cost share agreement would work and when it would work. And you have a lot of other issues to weigh with that. I can just tell you how it affects us. The engineer's estimate comes off of having the finished engineering done so we can have confidence that the cost that's being shared is a finite number and won't exceed that. Having that agreement in place is very helpful for us as we both secure private equity financing, basically the rest of the down payment on the construction loan from local investors, and for our conversations with the local banks on the construction loan, because it has to do with when the construction loan gets repaid. So, and then once that's all sorted out, we can actually start site improvements, infrastructure, build houses. So, and there's a happy house and a beautiful tree to remind me that this is the end of what I had to tell you. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
What questions do we have? Mr. Anderson?
So, talk to me about this lease to purchase issue. So, all right, imagine I work at the Commerce District, my income qualifies, but I don't have a down payment. So is that where the lease to purchase comes in? I could move in, and then through that rent, I'm accumulating a down payment? How does that work?
Well, when you sign the lease, we, just as a regular lease, we'd ask for a damage deposit and first and last. What happens is the damage deposit and the last month's rent starts your down payment account. And then every month, depending on where your income is, probably $150 to $200 of your rent, at a third of your income, gets also deposited in the down payment account. We'll be seeking other grant funds looking at things like down payment assistance and first-time home buying, home buyer assistance that comes through pardon? BATFA, and also most banks have, in order to be able to do Community Reinvestment Act lending, have a little more flexibility in their underwriting they'll require private mortgage insurance but a lower down payment. So we'll look to put you into get you to start accruing that down payment, and at the same time, you're living in the house. If you, for instance, if you had a credit repair issue that you need to get sorted out, you can see if it's $200 a month on top of your damage deposit and your last month's rent, you can see that in 11 and a half months, you'll probably have enough money for the down payment, and if you stay on track with the credit repair efforts, your credit repaired in 12 months, so you know that, next June, you can close on the house.
But in the meantime, you're in the house.
But in the meantime, you're in the house, and your neighbors get to know you and pay attention to whether or not you take your trash cans in, all that other stuff that neighbors expect from each other. And I think that it gives folks a chance to identify with the neighborhood. They're getting engaged to the house. Now, if you decide that you're going to actually move to Little Rock, you don't get your down payment account back. It's as if you've just been paying rent. So if you get engaged to the house and you split, you don't get the ring back. But what also it does is that those funds are now available to help with other down payment assistance for other buyers, and to help to staff the management of making sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And as you also have the kind of some tension between folks that are living in the neighborhood and would like the quiet enjoyment of their house, and people that are building houses fairly close. So it's a little more management intense than building on larger lots in an open field. It's an existing neighborhood. There's construction staging issues, and we're hoping that we're very much intending that the purpose of the project not just to deliver the housing, but to build some capacity inside of the local nonprofit to be able to do more projects, which is why local banks and local investors are really critical to this.
Some of these details, like the soft second and the lease to purchase option, were sort of foreshadowed. We had a big affordable housing summit about 5 years ago, and some of the home builders said, we don't have an affordable housing problem, we have an affordable housing buyer problem, where the buyers love the house, they qualify in terms of income, but their credit's been beat up, or they don't have the down payment. And so if we just build the houses, we're not doing the job. We also have to design the financing mechanisms so that the houses will be absorbed in a timely manner. And so that's really where the art comes in that John is offering, to really essentially design the sale process as well as the construction process. And so they're really two halves of the whole, and that's the level of detail we need to get to in order to make this successful.
And it's a process you have to pay a lot more attention to than the speculative home building.
So following on what Sarah said, the process of the lease to own, who will manage that process? Who will hold the dollars? Who will manage the paperwork of what goes into this account, who will do that?
It'll be Fayetteville Partners for Better Housing as the managing partner of the LLC set up for the project. And we'll need to engage local CPAs. We need to have that process straight with the banks that are involved as well, because the property is pledged as part of a construction loan. So they're going to want to see, the lenders are going to want to see that the rental operation is on the up and up, and that everything's moving smoothly while they still have construction risk.
My follow-up question would be, knowing as many people in the banking industry, I know there are lots of costs which then incur fees to manage those sort of things. That's not easy and that's not cheap to do. So do you foresee any issues with cost of managing those sorts of accounts, and will there be fees enacted to cover that expense for Partners for Better Housing, or how do you foresee that taking place?
We're setting that up as part of the soft cost budget for developing and selling and managing the project.
Building it into it ahead of time.
Yeah. And we've got right now probably a fairly conservative legal and CPA budget, just because the first time you do this in a state and in a locality, it's a little harder than, we did it at Willow Bend, we'll do it at Project 2, same CPA, same lawyer.
Okay.
and it's an important thing to know that will not be a for-profit owner of the house will be receiving rental income. It'll be the nonprofit will be receiving the rental income for the purpose of getting the renter into the house as soon as possible. So it's not a speculative, profit-seeking venture. And not there's anything wrong with that, but that's not the purpose of this program. It's not to build rent houses. The purpose of the program is to get people in the house and find as many, we have at least 3 tools in our toolbox to get people into the house, one of which is lease purchase.
Well, if you also think about kind of 3 rough groups of buyers. There's the market rate buyer who would like a small, energy efficient house, close to downtown or the Commerce District and the park. And they're having a hard time finding that. The houses available maybe are larger than they want or can afford. Or the small, cute little house with a 40-year-old roof and the awful bathroom is going to need a lot of work. So there's that market rate buyer that is maybe looking to settle for something that isn't really what he or she is looking for. Small, close-in, energy efficient, bikeable, walkable. Those are all very desirable things, and the market has a hard time adjusting from what we've been building for the last 30, 40 years. It takes time to get everybody moving in the same direction. Second group is the affordable buyer that has good credit, has a down payment, and has income that can qualify if they get a little help with a soft second. And so those first 2 buyers could move very quickly through the process. The folks
without any lease to purchase.
Without any lease to purchase.
Conventional banking process.
Conventional banking process. The third group, and the one that takes more management, are the folks that have credit issues or are going to need a year and a half to accumulate their down payment, and things are a little more tentative. And one of the things that home ownership in a situation where your household might be able to get by in 1 car, your energy bills are lower, your transportation costs are lower, it helps with a lot of financial stability. So to be able to be renting, getting engaged to the house while you're moving into ownership and being part of the neighborhood, it's a process that is more management intensive, but we're looking at it for folks that will be maybe 15 or 20% of the overall buyer population. So, but it's a critical 15%, and if we can't really address that, then we haven't really done the job that's really captured in the sort of mission that the group's put together. The single women professionals with down payments and good credit are demanding customers, but it's a lot less brain damage to put them into a house than for somebody that's got all the other issues that often are solved by once they get into a house.
So with the soft second mortgage, then these houses will still be appraising for full value and will still be protecting property values in the neighborhood and able to assess taxes at the full rate and all that.
Yes, this is pretty much the kind of the best practice for workforce for sale housing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of kind of capital A affordable housing programs involve tax credits and subsidizing the capital cost of a project so that the rents can be low and maintained for affordability. But then, in order to be able to make that work, they tend to get a little larger, and you end up concentrating affordable rental in all one place. That can be kind of tough. Ownership is tougher because of the things we talked about. And if you just identify, you take the 2 identical houses and discount the price of one to make it affordable, say with a direct grant or something, then the market rate buyer next door may have a hard time coming. They had 20% down, and now they're going to need 30% down because the appraised value of the discounted house it's the same as their house. So if the same house sells for the same price and the affordability gap is made up with a soft second, the appraisals are for the same number, the taxes are for the same number, and there's real equity that happens that way. The unintended consequences of a lot of the early workforce housing programs was that it really squeezed people at 102% of income, 102% of area income. So if you make, you had a good year, you got a modest raise, And the consequence of that is you can't buy a house because you make a little bit too much money. It really doesn't take much for that feeling of like, you know, this is not a square deal to sort of just spread through the community. That, you know, well, wait a minute, the city council voted for this and you got a raw deal? Well, that's, you know, that's just not right. And people come to that conclusion pretty quickly because he's a good guy and he makes $1,200 a year too much. Wow, you know, people get mad. So to keep the prices the same and subsidize the affordable buyer with the soft second, which isn't an out-and-out grant, it has to be bought down over time, give people a chance to be in the neighborhood, seems to be the best practice happening in communities around the country.
The other thing, it allows us to build a house, and when we build a house, we don't know whether it's a market rate house or an affordable house, and because we're not building an expensive house and a cheap house, we're building the identical house, and then we subsidize the buyer. So that creates, that way we don't have a stigma in the neighborhood of a series of cheap houses and a series of nicer houses. So it's a way to keep the consistency of both the appraised value and the quality of the neighborhood.
And the difference between the affordable buyer and the market rate buyer might be as little as $3,000 or $4,000 a year in income. And the person who's making $4,000 a year less might see a soft second for $10,000 forgiven over 12 years. So it's these small measures that actually make big moves in affordability, but they just have to be managed well and kind of designed right from the beginning.
So are all the low-impact development strategies that were talked about still included in the project?
Yes, and I think that they're going to be necessary in order to be able to see, right now we're looking at probably 78 houses. We're going to have to be using those low-impact development strategies to be able to maintain that kind of yield. Some of the more conventional practices would reduce the number of houses you can do.
If something happens and the city isn't able to do a cost share, will those still be a meaningful affordability component?
Yes, but our life gets a little more complicated. We would be looking at the state's first-time home buyer program. We would be looking for other ways to establish those soft second mortgages. At that point, the ratio would have to shift. You know, I think we can kind of do a direct. If we can deliver this kind of affordability, would you help us with the city infrastructure and the public right of way? And if you can't, then we'll have to trim the amount of affordable units because we'll have to have more market rate units because, well, there wasn't additional capital put in the project and we had to pay for all of the infrastructure and the public right of way. So we can do some pretty amazing things, but we can't do what we can't do. And I think that one of the other effects might be that the project would be delayed significantly while we tried to put together other funding. And it will, I think, probably affect the enthusiasm of the local investors.
Well, that's good to know. I ask because bearing in mind that reserves may not be in a couple of years what they are today, I think that we should all start thinking about whether or not our community development block grant money is if this is a good use for that pool of funds. Right now we use that, 100% of that funding goes into rehabilitation for qualifying homeowners, and I wonder if maybe taking a third of that or something over 2 years to help reduce the impact to the reserves on this project might be a good idea. And it's a long way out before we have to make that decision, but I asked that question today, and I'll bring up the CDBG money today because I think it's something that we might want to think about and that we might want to take the next 6 months or a year to think about and see if it's something we're comfortable with.
And other communities do put CDBG into public infrastructure in order to be able to make projects work. That's a pretty familiar thing.
It's something Fort Smith does a lot. They've built more than 200 affordable homes in the last decade, whereas Fayetteville, our housing authority, since we haven't taken that approach, has made it harder for us, and we haven't been able to build any.
And when we were working with the city, at the Home Depot grant, some of the CVDG conversation occurred, and a lot of the feeling was from our board and other people that we did not like the idea that the rehab program and our program were competing over funds, because that's not the message that we want to send, and we don't want to diminish affordable housing of existing structures by building new houses. So I understand you're looking for every kind of funding source you can look at, but I would hate to see a same size pie that we split. I'd rather see the pie get bigger in some other way, if that's possible, because that's not our organization feels a little uneasy if we're cutting affordability the other way. And so I'm not in the seat you're in where you have to just find out where these funds come from. But that is when we first had this conversation, we had some leftover bond money for the streets, and that looked like a good place to spend this money. And the determination of the city attorney was he did not feel good with the bond money since it wasn't specifically voted on by the buyers, if I'm remembering all this correctly, but that other funding would be more comfortable. And so I think that's how we got into this point in time. And again, I know you have to look at every single funding source, but certainly I can't speak for our entire organization, but I know that we would not like to see needed rehabilitations not happen because we're doing this project, if there's any other source of funding.
I think if you're thinking about you have a fixed pie and you're trying to figure out how to divide it up between competing interests, we're in a position where we're going to be working with some private money. We'll be chasing grants and other things. So in some respects, the Partners for Better Housing could be in a position to help go get more pie. But those sort of grant applications will be coming to you to join in the effort or figure out ways to get matches and the like. And I don't know what pools of funds are going to be available or their timing, but we'd anticipate working closely with the staff to try to figure out ways to stretch the city dollars.
You talked a little bit about absorption rates. How would you market and sell these homes? Would it be typical through the MLS system, or would it be?
Well, it would be through the MLS system. What we've typically done in the past is fully cooperate with brokers. It turns out to be a pretty good deal for the brokers because they just need to bring someone in and refer them and register that they brought that person in. As the sales process, if it's anything but just a straight market rate buyer, is a little more elaborate, and bless their hearts, the brokers tend to gum that up. So if it's just a straight market rate buyer, it's a conventional MLS listing and sales contract, and that's just a regular house sale. If it's the affordable program, we have to pick up the heavy lifting to make those transactions go. If it's particularly the lease purchase, then we have to absorb that additional transaction overhead and brain damage. The marketing side of it, we would push to get as much information out there that is news stories and blogs and information about this is special and unique that doesn't get the sort of mental discount that real estate advertising gets. Because there's enough really interesting things going on with the project that it's pretty compelling. And then you can always get signs and run ads, but we need to be able to maintain the same level of marketing budget that a conventional project would have, and then a little more to make sure the transactions work and we don't lose closings or disappoint buyers.
Okay, and kind of a follow-up to that, one thing when we passed the resolution, we talked a little bit about the legal aspects of how you actually do achieve this, because it's a really great idea. But how do we keep those homes in the segment, I guess the two-thirds that are reserved for the non-market rate buyers? How do we ensure that non-market rate buyers buy the non-market rate, or don't buy the non-market rate?
You have to push those transactions. You have to basically give them a head start. You market them early. You get a pool of buyers that need credit remodeling and all that. You get them started as early as possible because you can start with 30 or 40 buyers, and that turns into 3 or 4 people who can close. So we need to get that pool of buyers going early. You establish these things as targets and establish the process to get it done without establishing hard restrictions on, no, you can't buy that house. You make $600 a year too much. Go away. Because that actually, in some states there's case law about how that's actually a violation of the Fair Housing Act. So what we would probably end up with in the agreement about how do you deliver affordable housing with certainty is a process in our agreement that right now what we've gone through with the city attorney is our targets of a third, but our kind of minimum performance standard of half in 100% and below that's the minimum. And if it looks like we're having trouble meeting that, we need to step up the marketing and management effort to increase it. And that's our agreement between Chico Building and Land and Partners for Better Housing. At the bottom of that agreement is a clause that says that thing about how much affordable housing you're delivering. You can't change that in the contract without the approval of the city attorney in Fayetteville. So the city attorney's engineered a way to, without putting the city in a position where you're a party to the contract, you're a third-party beneficiary. So the problem with Fair Housing Act is pretty much anybody who feels they have a case can sue, and any judge that says, yeah, he was wronged can award. So we bear that risk, and the city doesn't. That's the benefit that's why you go through a third-party beneficiary to our contract.
Okay, so, sorry to have another follow-up, but so, basically, I mean, if the city does go ahead with the $1 million cost share, there is still the potential for people that have ample funds to purchase the homes that we've set aside for affordable housing. So, is that a possibility?
Yes, but I think we can come up with provisions for, the kind of the tripwire for how do you accelerate focusing the market on affordable buyers.
Part of the consulting agreement is that that Chico Building and Land develops the marketing process that gets us the affordable buyers, because they failed in their mission. They have not performed on their contract if they bring us all market rate buyers. They've convinced us that we can't do all affordable because we need to have a mixed neighborhood and we need to be able to say yes to people at every income bracket. But they're specifically tied to meeting that goal. And again, whether it's additional marketing efforts, additional financial training, whatever it takes to get those affordable buyers in there. If they don't do it, it's like building a house with no roof on it. They've not met their requirement.
Actually, maybe a simpler way to explain this is that with pretty much any subdivision, single-family houses, you don't offer everything for sale at once. You offer the releases, and so the market's opportunity to come in and buy all the houses is typically limited to a 5 or 6 house chunk of the project. So the opportunity for stepping up the participation of affordable buyers, it isn't a question of waiting till it's almost over and seeing how we did. With every construction release, or with every sales release for construction, you have the opportunity to see how we're doing. How many folks do we have waiting on deck as affordable buyers? Well, we have 17. Okay, so how many? Where are they at in terms of, are they going to be lease purchase, or are they able to just close?
So I guess you've spoken to the marketing strategy, but not really how we prevent ourselves from discriminating against buyers. And that's what I'm more concerned about, I guess.
Well, the way that we prevent discrimination against buyers is Partners for Better Housing invest seriously in the promotion of other buyers. So the folks that are typically have more hurdles to get to the market, we're looking to give them help to do that. so that they can be at parity with market buyers. So we need to have those folks ready to go, just like someone with good income, good credit, and a down payment, pre-qualified with Bank of Fayetteville, ready to go. We need to have the affordable buyers in that same position, so that, and the other effect of this is that it allows us to build into sales, to have sales contracts before we start a foundation and start that house. So we have less market risk of, did we build the wrong house? And it just sits there because it wasn't the one that people wanted. And we don't have the issue of having to carry houses, or these are the ones that are built, you need to settle for one of them.
And that's why the lease purchase agreement is so important, because as our organization, we can say yes to any buyer that qualifies for the lease. They don't have to qualify for any kind of banking standards. They can, if we have...
They do have to commit to get into the program.
Sure. There's some...
Sorry.
They don't have, it's not like anybody with a heartbeat, but it's, if we have, 3 buyers and we look like we're not on track to meet our affordable housing, we can pick the one buyer that is, the income falls in the right range for what we're trying to achieve, and we can execute a lease purchase agreement with them. But usually what you run into problems with, if you have 3 buyers, one of them which has excellent credit and a down payment, and the other one which is struggling, everyone's going to go to the buyer that has got the excellent credit and the down payment. But we have the tools that we can deliver to an affordable buyer, because it's our mission, that's what we've chosen to do, and that there is historically there are places where people have done that, and so there is law to support that.
Well, it's as a nonprofit, we're making the investment and bringing them to parity so that they can compete in the market without putting limitations artificially on a market rate buyer, or to create a situation where we're at risk for discriminatory practices under Fair Housing Act. I've spent, actually spending an afternoon in depositions is way too much time. I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, I initially had some concerns about offering the market rate units, but I think in a way we're still also helping create affordable housing even with some market rate units, because if you're paying the same price per square foot, but these are small houses, and if you look at what is available right now, someone who could qualify to buy a house at market rate, at 900 square feet can't qualify for the 1,500 square foot homes that are currently available. So I think that, and also by the energy efficiency, so you're going to be saving money on utilities, you're going to be saving money because of the location, and being able to use active transportation, and then there's also a lot of support facilities built into this neighborhood. So I think it's going to it's going to put more money in the pockets of the people who live there, and enable them to spend more money in the neighborhood, which is within a quarter of a mile of this commercial district down on South School Avenue. You can walk to the square. So I think that it is going to help people who can maybe afford to buy a 1,000 square foot house, but previously there's not a 1,000 square foot house available to buy unless you drive out to who knows where. So I feel pretty comfortable with this model. I think it's going to address a lot of needs in our community, and I wish it had been available when I was looking to buy a house, because this is what I was looking for, but it wasn't. So.
In some ways, these houses are addressing a segment of the market that isn't getting a lot of activity, because folks are tooled up to build larger houses that have greater transportation impact. And it makes sense that a project that has the city's participation should probably be focusing on stimulating that part of the market. I think also the affordable housing as a term is kind of a term of art. A capital A affordable housing has a list of things that goes into it. A tax credit project has a long list of things. Idea about affordability is 30% of your gross income is the max you can spend on housing. A lot of people spend more than that as a market decision. So this is kind of like small A affordable housing, even when it's market, because smaller, more energy efficient, different price point than a lot of the common offerings in the market right now. So while markets level out and have some innate fairness to them. They also have, they're kind of lumpy sometimes. They don't deliver what everybody's looking for.
When I said we would take 45 minutes, I thought I was joking, but I think we're at probably 45 minutes. But I will say this is we've worked very hard over the last 5 years to bring forth the best project for this piece of land and that location, and it may not be a perfect setup, but it is the very best we can do. We spent a lot of time looking at community land trust models. We've looked at a lot of different options, and after doing the research and talking to the experts, this is the program we think is best. So we can say that to you wholeheartedly. This is the best program we can bring to you on this site. We understand it's a serious commitment, and we appreciate all your time in letting us bring you up to date on this.
I apologize for being so long-winded, because I thought he was serious when he said 45 minutes.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you all very much. Okay. Need the lights down back here or up?
Yeah, they've got a presentation.
Okay. The next thing we have is the 4 housing narratives to anchor an arts district, University of Arkansas Community Design Center. I believe you have this one?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. First, let me introduce Jeff Huber. He's Assistant Director of the University of Arkansas Community Design Center, and Corey Amos is a project designer on site. They both worked on this project. This is a grant we wrote for the National Endowment for the Arts a couple of years ago, and the work has been taking place over the last 12 months. And what we did was we took a look at the Walton Arts Center parking lot, and we just asked the question, what would that property look like if we could put housing and retail there? We answered that in 4 different ways, and we tried to, in each way that we answered that, we tried to address a different question. What's the minimum we could do? What's the most iconic project we could do? What would we do if we wanted to accommodate festivals? What would we do if we wanted to preserve all the parking that was there? So each one of the schemes answers those questions a little bit differently, but the real point here is that this is the very, very, very first stage of the conversation we could have about developing that property. So none of these designs have really gone beyond the conceptual. We've got a great model, we've got great questions, we've got great parameters for each of these schemes, but this is really intended to start the conversation and not beyond that. We know this will be a multi-year process with the Walton Arts Center and with the city and with others, and this is really just meant to get the conversation started. When we wrote the grant, we had the Chamber and the Walton Arts Center as partners on the grant to help us with public input and ground truthing some of these things. And the real intent here is that perhaps this would lead to some kind of RFP or RFQ process to see this site developed. That land is probably the most valuable land in the city in terms of development, and we don't want to see it just turned into some kind of maximum profit student warehouse, because it's worth more to the city than that. And so this, we think, would help us in that process of developing an RFP or an RFQ that would put some of those intangible benefits, some of those social benefits that we want to get from this property in ink. And so with that, I'll let Jeff go ahead.
Great, Alderman Petty. I thought I was going to have to do this, but yeah, thank you. Good evening, Council and Mayor. Yeah, what I want to also say that we have the students. This was a studio project developed in fall, and so half the group behind me here is our students from that fall semester, and so they wanted to come to this public meeting and actually see and engage in the process as we're moving forward on this project. So what I want to present tonight is the kind of 4 housing proposals that we developed through this Anchoring the Arts District. Currently, the Cultural Arts District is a mile by a quarter mile, and I'm sorry, 3/4 of a mile, and it doesn't really have an anchor. And so what we're trying to do is saying if Walton Arts Center has nearly $40 million of investment are actually coming along this area, but $20 million towards the Walton Arts Center, $6 million parking garage, as well as the affordable or attainable housing that's potentially is coming as a liner against that parking garage. How can we take all these kind of these investments and begin to anchor those within a downtown neighborhood, a complete neighborhood. And complete neighborhoods are really developed as providing all the services, both commercial as well as housing services, within the downtown core. And this is important when you're factoring these services, because traditionally what you see, most big box development are fast food franchises. Currently what you see as a tax yield on those per acre developments doesn't even meet about 40% of the tax base to support the infrastructure around them. But Fayetteville traditionally built what was mixed-use, low-rise. Think about the downtown square as a kind of example of that density. And what we're really trying to achieve here is what we call transit-ready schemes. So the minimum threshold you really want to develop at is 15 units an acre, because that is the threshold where you start to see the tax base on that property begin to pay back for itself and supporting and maintaining the infrastructures around it. And this is important because just to visualize density in Fayetteville, the Eco-Modern Flats is 30 units per acre. The Courts at Wyndham is 20 units per acre. You look at the Dixon, it's about 32 units per acre. The Three Sisters project is 10 units per acre. And Duncan Avenue Apartments, they're 17 units an acre. But I think what's critical is to look at the one on the top left there. It's 60 units an acre. It's the Old Town apartments that are located next to Church and along Meadow Street. Those are 60 units an acre. You would never think of that density within Fayetteville, but those are the densest housing we actually have besides the campus housing. And so what we're trying to do is look at the kind of density and the typologies of housing that currently exist in Fayetteville and how to adapt those, and thinking about if this is not going to serve as just a 285 parking space lot anymore to the Walton Arts Center, how can it serve not only for the parking but also integrate housing typologies that are common to the area. And so we started out with 5 big challenges to the site. We had to deal with festivals. A lot of people asked how we're going to implement or integrate Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue, as well as Artisphere, as well as any other festivals that could potentially happen in this area. Addressing parking, it's a huge concern, especially for the Walton Arts Center as well as the city, and just addressing the entertainment district. Auto-dominated street, we were asked to look at streetscape proposals along West Avenue that would look at traffic calming solutions, and also the springs on site. We can't move those springs, so how can we integrate those into the design solution? And again, the Walton Arts Center $20 million upgrade. How do we align this new development that could come to the area with that? So, what we like to say is that you could fit essentially 3 more downtowns in downtown just based on the vacant lots or parking lots that are around town. And right now we see the walk score of 80, which actually in a downtown you want to be at 90 or higher. So we developed 3 different proposals that look at varying ranges of how much units they put on site and the parking that they can give back. And these are fairly straightforward. This is a visioning document, so these are rough designs and that were guided by mixed-use developments. And it's not to say that we couldn't actually achieve maybe putting back all 285 parking spaces on the site if we were able to look at these designs a little more specifically. And so each one is trying to align open space systems with the housing typology on it. So what we're trying to do is give back spaces to the city to really create a superior urban environment and a walkable environment. So what we're going to do is we'll probably slip out the different models as we're going through this presentation. But the first one is a laminated approach. It has 51 units, which achieves about a 17 units per acre density on the site. The site itself is about 3 acres. And it achieves 100 parking stalls. What we started out with this solution was, you said, what if we integrated multiple different typologies of housing that exist currently in Fayetteville, whether it be courtyard, patio housing, or town housing, and tried to maintain surface parking only. And so this scheme has no structured parking in it, and what can we achieve? I think that's the driving scenario for this. And so what you see is an open space system that looks at an interior street that creates a kind of great urban alley, and I'll show you an image here in a second of what that creates through attainable housing. One of the things we had to do through the NEA grant was integrate artist housing. Now that percentage changes in some of these projects between 20 to 40%, give or take, but that was one of the aspects that was required through the NEA grant. Because currently, artist housing can't be achieved in downtown based on affordability parameters, and so what we were trying to do is slip that in. So the plan is pretty simple. It's a laminated approach with, switching between open space systems. West Avenue is actually considered to be a traffic calm street. It's what we would call a skinny street. It's brought down to 22-foot right-of-way, throughway, as well as a 9-foot on-street parking band to the west side. And then you get a great elegant liner of townhouses, and then after that, you get the interior parking garden, which has most of the surface parking that we were able to achieve on site. And you see the darker orange, or actually there's an entry court that aligns with the new Star Theater entrance to Walton Arts Center and allows for what we call a shared plaza that would help traffic calm as well. And then a courtyard housing. The other one is a courtyard housing with a playscape. I'll just move through this quickly. So, here's what the courtyard housing would look like. The top rendering on the left-hand side. The bottom rendering is moving through the gateway from Dixon Street into this parking garden. And this is what it would look like from standing at the intersection looking north where the Star Theater is and that entry plaza. And so you see housing actually can create an elegant backdrop and frontage to the street. We don't have to, this scheme actually tries to maximize housing on site with no commercial except for the commercial at the ground floor along Dixon Street. And you'll see these drawings on each one of these schemes, but what this addresses is how it would operate as a festival street. And so what you see is the Nadine Baum lawn actually gets integrated where there could be some festival events, as well as what we're trying to do, and we talked to Walton Arts Center, and they're willing to do, is take down the walls on their pocket park within their site, and how that could be opened up to the street and actually start to tie in a larger open space system with the entry court in this proposal, as well as the courtyard and around the courtyard housing. And the street would still be able to be open even during a festival event. And we're not actually removing the roof off the Walton Arts Center. That's just to help illustrate how the Star Theater and the 1,200-seat auditorium space actually work together with the lobby of these streetscapes. And so this is what the view would be down that parking garden. And what we're trying to do here is, by making affordable housing for artists through this interior street, you can actually maximize their frontage through live-work units that allow them to integrate their certain arts, whether it be visual performing arts. They can sell it there and practice there. And so it becomes another great interior street. And the second scheme is the pixelated approach. It starts to achieve about 19 to 20 units per acre. It's got 171 spaces, keeping in mind that's 285 spaces currently on that site. So you start to see us putting back more parking than is actually required of the housing on the site in this scheme. And this actually has to change to structured parking. There's a podium parking that operates right up against Metro District to the south side of this project, located, if I could point. It's located just in here, so the entry and exit of that shared parking is there. And the great thing about this one is the whole site becomes a paseo or a passageway system to allow maximization of pedestrians to move in and out of that site. And then the West Avenue actually becomes a boulevarded street where it has a tree-lined median at the center of the street. And then the housing actually gets integrated. Housing, it's only two different types of housing, but it's how they get turned to 90 degrees or 180 degrees to actually create this pixelated effect of that housing. And so it's actually a very simple housing to build for a developer. And then I think it achieves a great open space system for the city through this block. And this passageway or these paseo systems are also called Muse housing, and we have an image of an example of that in Boston. So here's the plan. It creates three large plazas along West Avenue that then has a tree-lined boulevard in between that. And so this becomes a traffic calm street where you actually remove all the on-street parking in here and really give it over more to the pedestrian. And again, you see the alignment of these plazas and the spring and everything aligned with the Star Theater and that new entrance. So the idea is, as people are exiting to the parking, if they're parking there for the Walton Arts Center event, they can move through these plazas and get easily to the Star Theater, which, the new parking deck on School Avenue is really to serve the 1,200-seat auditorium. Walton Arts Center's concern is still serving the Star Theater, especially through its renovations, if two events were happening simultaneously. And what the great, incredible thing about this project is, through the pixelated approach, you get a series of courts, and those courts actually kind of give a push and pull to the street where you get these enclaves where they can be great dining courts like the image on the top shows, and that they give back to the Dixon Street realm, or they give back to the Walton, or I'm sorry, to the West Avenue streetscape. And so this is actually a view from Dixon Street. And some of the arts functions is we're trying to integrate things like art galleries and other sort of pieces. And so you see this scheme, the second scheme, starts to embed commercial, a lot more heavy commercial aspects to the project, and what it would look like during a festival along that West Avenue. And so the center median actually becomes a place where you can put food trucks or tents and have outdoor markets or other kind of art-focused festivals. And so within this scheme, what we identified is in the festival street, it could be shut down, and you could still access the structured parking that is actually accessed back through here. And so West Avenue can conceivably handle large-scale festivals now within this approach, but it would be more centered around smaller gatherings within those three courts that we're providing. And so this is a view of one of these paseos, these passageways, or a muse, in between the parking garage, which parking garages don't have to look like that. This is a podium that actually can be flanked by public art and become a great landscape. And so they don't have to be ugly things, and you don't have to obviously line them with buildings to be aesthetically pleasing. And, you know, you see the kind of housing and how it provides terraces and patios that still keeps a certain level of privacy intact, even if you're allowing a lot of public to move through. The third approach is what we call the anchor approach. And this one, the guiding driver for this was if Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue had to stay on site, this is the one that could provide that. What we talked about with Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue was they required 50,000 square feet of space to accommodate their stage as well as beer garden and other types of programs that they need. And so this scheme actually pulls a large plaza towards the Star Theater and in the mid-block section, breaking down a 600-foot-long block, which is considered to be a super block, breaking it down into a more urban format of about 300-foot by 300-foot blocks. And so the open space system, on West Avenue, it's bookended by tree-lined streets, and you actually integrate the Pocket Park to Walton Arts Center in with this plaza. And actually the trail in this scheme gets moved into the plaza as well, the bike trail that constantly is moving onto the backside of the site now. This one actually puts everything and laminates it together within this plaza. And the plaza acts as a shared street, so that you can still have cars moving through that as they're moving into the entry underneath the parking garage. And this is a concept that we've really tried to spearhead in here. It basically is a plaza designed for the motorist to act more socially. You design these things. What we always love to say is a street that has a speed limit sign is actually the traffic engineer's admission of guilt that they didn't design the speed or the street to the types of speed they want to see. So in these kind of environments, you're designing the streets to 17 miles per hour, which is the established threshold where you see motorist to pedestrian fatalities wildly go down. And so the car is a welcomed participant in this plaza, but it's really about a plaza to be devoted to pedestrians. And we create a kind of ambulatory or a kind of edge conditions that set up rooms and events around there where you can hang out under and around the spring, or you can hang out into the alley of trees, which would have, in these mid-rises, have restaurants that could spill out into those spaces. And so this is what it would look like at Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue from walking out of the Star Theater. And so you can see it can still accommodate that and creates a kind of new hub, to give you a kind of understanding the scale. This is about the same size as the current downtown square. And so it's almost like a square for the square. This one would be on the northwest corner, and the square itself would be on the southeast corner. And I think we were excited. It was snowing one day when we did this rendering, and thought, wouldn't it be great to look at it in the snow? And so this is a view looking south down West Avenue, and back towards that plaza. You see the Walton Arts Center is off to the left-hand side there. And what this does is it maximizes the building frontage to where you can actually achieve greater financial ability off of the renting of the ground floor retail spaces within this project. So during a festival event like Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue, obviously you could still shut down the street, The other entry to the parking garage is at the current curb cut where the parking lot is, and so people can still move in and out from that Dixon Street side, and this can be given over to pedestrian-only events where you can have the tents and other food trucks and food carts. And this is what it would operate on a normal kind of day, where you have spill-outs from the mid-block or the mid-rise housing off to the south and west. Those restaurants can spill out underneath these great landscapes, or a cafe could be located. Again, not, what you would have noticed on this one is the parking garage, structured parking garage, actually is fronted or lined on two sides. But you can still look at what we call Fayetteville's best porch, potentially, where this park and cafe is, where you can actually have seating up there and people can have their coffee. And then during Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue, it can still be an event where people can go up there and watch back down to Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. So the parking deck actually becomes a facility to align that. And two, you're going to have other things like renting it out for weddings, like the downtown parking lot in Miami Beach by Herzog de Meuron, where the parking garage doesn't always have to serve as a parking garage. It can serve as public art as well as facilities to be rented out to other types of events. And so the last approach, and probably the most radical approach, is the mountain approach. It's got 84 units, which means essentially it's about 30 units per acre. So again, it's about the same density as the Dixon, but keeping in mind, each one of these was designed to the current codes, so we have to maintain the 84-foot height limits, which this one caps out at. And this approach is quite simple. It's a terraced housing approach that's draped over a large parking hall, what we call a parking hall. And Corey could probably take one of those roofs off there to kind of show how this parking hall works within that. But this one also gives you the most retail space. It's probably about 60,000 square feet of retail space, museum space, gallery space, and restaurant space. And it also has student, artist, live, work housing. And what's incredible about this is, when you move into these parking halls, they have pathways where people enter their units, and so the parking is actually just as much as public art as the street realm itself, and I'll show you that through here. But the open space system is considered a kind of art loop. Again, the trail system is looked at as expanded, and you pull it into West Avenue again, and you get where you would set up events that could happen and aligning. And this ties together Nadine Baum, Walton Arts Center, and even this the Mountain Complex through a kind of campus logic. And so you look at the open space system as the glue that weaves everything together and actually becomes a traffic calming to West Avenue as well. And the plan for that. So again, it's tying all the kind of open space that right now is kind of piecemealed around the site and tying that all and integrating together. And it's actually a cool concept, right? I mean, we live in a hill town, so why not build a kind of essentially a housing hill, right? And so this is, and I apologize, it looks like the bottom image is a little dark, but this is a view from West Avenue and Dixon Street, the corner of it. So when you look through this, what our ideas are to make the retail spaces actually glass on both sides, both from the parking hall side as well as the street side. So you can actually get this expression of porosity that even though it looks large, it still has an expression of feeling light, and the housing on top of that. And then you see the views. The one on the top left is from the trail along Dixon Street looking south, and then the third one is actually hovering kind of over Dixon Street looking towards Mount Sequoia with this incredible terraced housing. The great thing about this project is each unit has a spectacular view of whether it be downtown or whether it be of campus or whether it be of the hills to the northeast. And then what it does at the street level, it actually provides low-impact development landscapes, public artscapes, as well as still allowing traffic calming to happen within that. And so this is actually, if you extended the pocket park and got rid of those walls along Walton Arts Center and just planted another line of trees, you'd actually start to stitch the road together with those open space systems. And so during a festival event, this is probably an aggressive approach. It's almost like a mat. Everything can happen everywhere. Public art, Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue could still happen in this. It may be that they have to be accommodated slightly different, but it integrates all the kind of facilities. And again, the parking West Avenue could be shut down, and where the parking is still accessed to the south parking hall through the Spring Street entry, and then from the Dixon Street side, it can be accessed from Dixon Street. So, I think this is one of the last views, but it's the art loop, what again it gives back to the city in the way of frontage. I mean, this actually starts to make an architectural icon that's just as prominent as the architectural icon next to it, the Walton Arts Center. And from the trail side, what frontage, what we're seeing now is there's a lot of commercial activity happening on the trails. How can you use these schemes to actually maximize commercial space fronting those trails and making public art? And so, these projects could begin to tie it. And so what we're presenting today is just really a lot of principles that hopefully will guide the project as you're developing the RFP process. But this is to show you basically through a quick feasibility study conducted with architecture students over a semester and with the professional staff at the Design Center, what could be possible based on a very incremental approach like the first scheme, the laminated approach, to a kind of radical proposal like this, an icon for the city, a new icon that ties well with the Walton Arts Center. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Before we do questions, I was hoping, Steve Clark, you might be able to say a few words. I know that whenever we had you in, you had some insights and some other comments you made, and I was hoping you might share those with the council.
I'd be happy to. We were fortunate to be a part of this process from the beginning, and I had the good fortune to see this before you've gotten to see it. The Chamber's position is unequivocal and clear. We think the mountain approach is the absolute best. We think that's exactly what we should embrace, and it comes from these reasons, based on these reasons, I guess I should say. In August, we'll have a new entering class of freshmen. When that class comes in here, this MSA that we live in will be over 500,000 people. That changes everything about how this region is viewed, both nationally and internationally. When we start talking about that change, the idea of an icon becomes very important. One of our sister cities to the north just they're getting ready to build their icon. If you saw it, it's a square box. It's a box off the square, but it's called Thrive. I love this one because I like the word innovate. I think the icon has a place in the future of Fayetteville. This icon has a place in the future of Fayetteville for these reasons. You notice the trail, the incorporation of the trail. The trails are ribbons of commerce. Now, there are a lot of people argue with me on that and say it's a place for exercise. It's a place for contemplation, but it's a ribbon of commerce, and it runs through our city, and it is pulsing now. People businesses are thriving because of the trail system that would not be thriving if they were not there. This helps move that forward. The second part of this is that it still addresses the issues that have been foremost on your agenda for the last several years. Downtown parking. There's the same amount, if not, in fact, more. The third thing it does, it addresses more than 60,000 square feet of retail space, which allows business to grow, thrive, and create new business. And so as we see it, it is a vision, and a really great vision, and a vision we hope that you'll give real serious thought to embracing. We know this is not going to happen in the next 12 months or the next 60 months, but we need to have vision beyond the next 60 months. And we can only do this if we start. And what I found very exciting about what these students did, what the Community Design Center did, we've been blessed at the Chamber as your economic developer to see some other parts of Central and South America, but in particular the country of Panama. The country of Panama took an area much like this, which was an old military base that the U.S. gave to the country of Panama, and they developed a concept called Panama Pacifico, and just said, we're going to create a vision. We're going to create an icon. And they literally went forward with an RFP with that notion in mind, and they are in fact doing that. And they're not looking for a quick fix. They're looking for a fix that's going to take a decade or two to get to where everything in place. But they're building for the future. And so from our perspective, we compliment the work that's been done by the Community Design Center, their students. We think this is something you should very sincerely and seriously take a look at. Because the Fayetteville of not only 2020, but 2030 and 2040, I believe, will benefit enormously. And remember, we're replacing a parking lot. So, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. So, I don't have much to add. I will say that in our meeting with the Walton Arts Center, they were also enthusiastic about this. And one of the reasons we did this is because we know that a world-class performing arts center has adequate parking, but maybe it's not right at the front door. Maybe it's not the first thing you see when you walk out of the lobby. And so they're enthusiastic about this one. I think what the purpose of this presentation was today is being so early into this process, really just being conceptual. We're looking for your feedback. If you have thoughts today or questions today, we want to hear from you today. If that comes to you later, please let us know because we want to incorporate that in our final report. And speaking of, we'll send you a document through the clerk that you can download that has more information about what's happened here. Not just images, although there are a few more renderings, but more of the technical details about what drove some of these decisions.
Especially as it addresses precedents like the housing and West Avenue in particular, how the street sections would operate.
And before, if you just burn it before you just get that out there, I will say we're planning to exhibit this. The date is not exactly set, probably in the East Square Plaza building in May. So if you want to get a closer look at the models in context and see some of the other renderings and get a chance to walk around them and get on the level with them and that sort of thing, they'll be available then for you and the rest of the public to do that.
Can we choose our unit at that and sit down? Really? Yeah. Yeah.
You might be waiting a while, but I think absolutely.
Well, I just have to say I missed our meeting last week and a lot of things last week because I had to go to a conference in Denver. But and I was there alone, so as a woman walking in a big city alone, I was amazed that I could have gone to the symphony, to the theater, to a Rockies game, to an apartment, to a convention center, to a hotel, all within walking. And when you showed that picture up there, I thought it felt really good to be able to be in a city like that as a woman alone and be able to go to all of those things on foot and not get run over, and it was just great. So I'm very excited to see. I didn't know this was exactly I didn't know we were going to see such great models. And so I'm sort of just busting out after that experience last week to see us think ahead like this. So I applaud you. Students are awesome, and thank you all for your great work. I have no idea how you do that. It's kind of amazing to me, and the idea is to me just terrific. Just terrific.
Thank you.
I'll just say I really appreciate this effort. I was once a student at the Community Design Center, and so I know how much hard work went into this, and this is amazing. I love all the first three schemes. Architecturally, the mountain terrifies me. I think there's a lack of human scale. The materiality is disturbing, but I appreciate the imagination, and I like the concept of the retail along the trail. But I, prefer Scheme 2 and Scheme 3, I think, a lot more. But I am pro-icon for the city of Fayetteville, and I want to see us move forward in any of these directions are a vast improvement over what we have now.
Anybody else? Okay.
Well, thank you for your time.
Very much.
Thank you.
Hey, yes, students.
Okay. Anything else?
Equipment.
Water and sewer. After equipment.
Okay. Thank you all very much.